And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Episode 83. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you out there. Happy March Madness to all of you out there. The brackets are out. St. John's, a 2 seed in the West region, and their first Big East Conference Tournament championship in 25 years. The city is red instead of green today. It is fantastic. We'll dive into St. John's path to potentially a Final Four. They've got a little bit of a difficult region and some interesting matchups if things play out. But they will play Omaha Thursday in Providence with a late tip, so bring your coffee. But we'll dive into Rick Pitino's chances to get to another Final Four. In terms of the pro, Mikal Bridges talking to Tom Thibodeau about minutes. Does that make any sense? We'll dive into that. NHL, we're winding down to the final 15 games of the regular season. We will talk Yankees-Mets just a little bit over a week to go till spring training. The Giants looking for a quarterback. Jets bringing more familiarity for Justin Fields. We'll talk soccer. Gotham FC got underway, and the Liberty decided, hey, let's make a big trade last night that went under the radar with the Connecticut Sun. And all that and much more coming up next here on New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. We will be back in just a minute. Once again, thank you for hopping in with us here on St. Patrick's Day. I'm excited for March Madness. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year, just nonstop basketball, and to have my school, St. John's University, part of it, and a really legit part of it for the first time in a long time is something to treasure. So we will dive into all that coming up. I want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Please like and subscribe here on YouTube. All of our live videos are here, so be sure to check that out. All of our shows also have unique show pages, iesportsradio.com/New York State of Sports. If you miss any portion of the show, you just want to download it again, maybe you're looking for that pregame fix before Thursday night. Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those fun things. Be sure to check that out. You could follow me on X, Abracadator555, or you could follow the show at NY State Sports IE. I was live tweeting during the Big East tournament. Thank you to all those that participated. Got a lot of interesting followers during those games, especially the Marquette game on Friday and the Creighton game on Saturday. My schedule, I'm not sure yet, will allow at least for the first half on Thursday, but we'll try to tweet during the NCAA tournament as much as we can. And also want to remind you about the Supporters Club. It is unique to all of our shows. For $5 a month, we give you unique content. We also, if you want to have a show dedicated to your team, since we talk about so many teams here on this show, we will do that. You could be a guest on the show and really join in all the fun. We also do different episodes. Maybe we'll have some guests, things like that. So we want you to be a part of this team, and thank you for being a part of the New York State Sports family. The show has done so well over the last since January. Essentially, we've seen growth to the show that I haven't imagined possible. So be sure to check that out. I greatly appreciate all the support that you all give. And please, if you're here on YouTube, join in the conversation. Send your questions, send your comments. You can email me as well, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. I'm always happy to hear from you. So do not hesitate to reach out with a question. So we're going to take our first time out. We're going to hear from our great sponsors. We'll come back and we'll talk all things St. John's, look back at the Big East tournament, and look ahead to their path here in the NCAA tournament. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back after this.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clinking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at iSports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the iSports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at iSports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Of course, special thanks to our awesome sponsors here at IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Of course, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, your snack for March Madness. So if you're watching those college basketball games of the men's and women's tournament, be sure to check out what jerky, beef jerky. Vital Apparel, of course, that awesome gym wear, supporting mental health awareness. Seal the Deal Wax Seals for your great invitations. And check out all the great shows we have at IE Sports Radio each and every day. We also have a new sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. Go to getrawnutrition.com. You can use the promo code IESR to get 10% off of your purchase. So obviously we're going to lead the show with St. John's. And you think about New York sports, right? There's so many professional teams. We've got 9 teams in the 4 major sports. And St. John's is taking over the city. This team that had expectations going into the year, not lofty expectations, but after nearly making the NCAA tournament last year, they were picked 5th in the Big East, thought they could make the tournament this year in year 2 for Rick Pitino. And not only did they match that expectation, they exceeded that expectation. And Saturday night against Creighton in the Big East Championship, and I know a lot of people thought that maybe St. John's shouldn't have the home court, but that's kind of the great thing about when St. John's is going and you get MSG as a home court. St. John's did not lose one game at Madison Square Garden this year. And they played a lot of games at MSG, more than they played in a long time. So to be able for that to happen, have an undefeated home record was big. But they win their first Big East Conference tournament since 2000, an 82-66 win over Creighton in the Big East Championship. By the way, thank you all for tuning in Thursday. We tried out a post-game show for St. John's Butler. Time didn't really allow for post-game shows the last 2 days. But it was a lot of fun. And like I said, we'll try to do some during the NCAA tournament if possible. And we'll start with the Marquette game first because I think that was the more fun game. Marquette gets up 24-9. Cam Jones has 13 points early for Marquette. And the St. John's team, both Friday and Saturday, and you've seen it all season, they get down early, but nothing really phases them. They're a second-half comeback team. And that's what you have to love about this group. And it was all about Zuby Ejiofor, who didn't play a great game on Thursday against Butler. And he dominated this game, shot 11 of 15, 33 points, 9 rebounds. He kept getting to the free throw line. And I'm watching the game like, keep letting Zuby eat. You got to be able to just feed him in the paint, attack, go to the free throw line. Did a really good job with that against Marquette. They were 18 for 25 at the line, shot 41%. And the key in that game, like we talked about Thursday, was, all right, Jones is going to get his. You can't allow Marquette to get there, the rest of Marquette to get theirs. And the Golden Eagles only shot 6 of 29 from 3. Joplin only had 9 points. Chase Ross had 8, dealt with foul trouble the bulk of the game. But St. John's had 4 players in double figures. They definitely, even though the rebounding edge was about even in this game, St. John's had 11 offensive rebounds. They forced 17 turnovers. They did what they had to do, and they swept a really good Marquette team this season. They got a little bit of a break. I don't know how much of a break with Creighton beating UConn in the second semifinal. A little bit of drama at the end. I don't think Jemiah Neal should have dunked the ball, and I don't blame Hassan Diarra for UConn for getting upset about that. But Creighton gets 2 out of 3 against UConn, sets up the Big East Championship. And the first half was an ugly first half. Creighton led 28-25 at the break. St. John's couldn't buy a bucket, and I was thinking along the lines, eventually Rick Pitino said it, St. John's was kind of intimidated by the size of Ryan Kalkbrenner, and they weren't going at him in the paint. They were settling for floater shots and mid-range shots and not wanting to get really physical. Creighton only had one foul in the first half, which you don't see often. Creighton usually commits a good portion of fouls. That did not happen. And then the Red Storm got hot, and red hot, pardon the pun, 23 of 32 in the second half. They were hitting threes. RJ Lewis, after just 2 points in the first half dealing with foul trouble, has 27 of his 29 in the second half. That breaks a Big East championship game record. And you look at RJ Lewis's path to go from last season at his first year transferring from UMass, dealt with the shin splints, was a good player, but you talked about Danis Jenkins and Chris Ledlum and Joel Soriano a little bit more. RJ has become the focal point of this team. He has definitely improved his perimeter shooting. He gets in the paint. He attacks the basket. And he got a stupid technical on a three-point shot that I think the ref should have really went over and debated and said, is this really a technical in a 4-point game where he puts the three fingers up and the ref thinks he's pointing a gun? I don't get that at all. To me, you got to read the room. But St. John's took off from there, and an absolute dominant performance. And they did something that's great, and they've done a good amount. And that's forced turnovers. 15 Creighton turnovers out of 21 St. John's points. St. John's had just 9 turnovers. And you look at the matchups this year, they had about 60-plus points on 45 turnovers against Creighton. And usually if you're averaging a point per possession, a point per turnover on a possession, like you force turnovers and things like that, to get basically a point per turnover or almost a point and a half, like that's a massive advantage. And St. John's redeemed themselves after losing to Creighton earlier this year. They win the last 2 at the Garden. And it was just an emotional scene. I mean, you see them cutting down nets and Rick Pitino talking about how this is for the city and this is for the students and this is for the alums. Because the alums, look, I'm an alum, but I haven't been that long-suffering alum like ones that saw them last win in the 80s. Like, I don't know what this kind of moment is like and supposed to feel. Like, as I've always said on the show, I was a student in 2011 when Steve Lavin took the team to the tournament. It was great just to make it. But I could never really imagine what winning the Big East would be like and doing what this team has done, winning 9 in a row, having 30 wins in the regular season, only losing 4 games by 7 points total. Last night they talked on the women's show that the competitive losses are a metric. I was like, if that was the men's team, they would be a 1 seed. But obviously that's not the case. But you just want to savor these kind of moments, regardless how March goes, because they don't come around this often. Now it's going to be an expectation for Rick Pitino and St. John's to be this good. It's not going to be that Cinderella story that takes over New York and does these kind of weird things. So enjoy this one. Rick Pitino continues to win conference tournaments. He's that kind of coach. He's one of the best coaches to ever do it. And the impact he's had has been crazy. And give the big trio a lot of credit. RJ, Zuby, and Kadari Richmond combining for 61 of the 82 points in this game. I thought Kadari Richmond had a strong game, 6 of 10 shooting. He didn't try to take threes, which thank God he didn't try to take threes. 12 points, 12 boards, 4 assists. Lewis had 10 boards to go to 29. Zuby Ejiofor had 20. I love the bench minutes, though, in this game. And there was only 3. Davion Smith only had 4 points, but his impact is more the defensive end. Sadiq Abine Ayo had 2 huge threes in the first half as St. John's was trying to find their footing. He stepped up and had a huge game in 12 minutes. And Vincent Iwachukwu, coming off the bench, Zuby had 3 fouls with about 13 minutes to go. Iwachukwu comes in and immediately goes at Kalkbrenner and hits a hook shot. I was like, that's the kind of stuff you need. And Iwachukwu doesn't get a lot of minutes. But when you have more depth on this bench with Iwachukwu and Ruben Prey, they've got strong bigs. Now, they'll probably be more developed next year. Just think about this team next year with Brady Dunlap and Jaden Glover, and maybe they had a transfer or 2. But with RJ and Zuby Ejiofor probably coming back, that creates a team that could really make a run next year. But next year is for another time. We're talking about this year. St. John's is in the tournament. They get a 2 seed, which, again, I think they had to win the Big East tournament to get a 2, considering they were probably one of the last 2 seeds. And it begs the question, would you rather have been a 2 seed in the West, where the regional is in San Francisco, or would you rather have been a 3 seed in the East and get the chance to play in Newark in the Sweet 16? To me, I don't think it matters, especially I think they kind of dodged a break in the fact there's not a lot of West Coast teams in their region, which is weird. The West region has hardly any West Coast teams. So if they do get to San Francisco, it's not going to be that home court advantage kind of vibe for any team, which helps. So I don't mind that they were not East. A lot of people were asking me Saturday, do you think they'll get a 1 seed? And the answer was no. And I think it's no because the SEC was so good this year. 14 teams in the NCAA tournament. They get 2 of the ones with Auburn and Florida. Houston was consistent all year. Duke, of course, even though Cooper Flagg didn't play the semis and the final of the ACC tournament, they had a strong year. And you look at even the twos, like you had 2 SEC teams in Tennessee and Alabama. And Michigan State had a good case out of the Big Ten, even though they lost in their conference tournament. So I'll take a 2 seed, not complain about a 2 seed at all. I think any other year you can make a case because St. John's, the case against them for 1 seed was metrics. Meanwhile, metrics kept them out last year when they had good enough metrics, but not enough wins. The tournament selection is very fickle. Just ask North Carolina, who gets in despite being 1-12 in quad ones. I'm glad Xavier got in, by the way. Getting 5 Big East teams was huge, especially making up for last year. So the Red Storm's first game will be Thursday at 9:45 Eastern. That's about that time. You got to see when the other game ends. Usually it's 30 minutes afterwards. Late tip in Providence, Rhode Island on CBS. Andrew Catalan and Steve Lapis on the call. They've been on a lot of calls for St. John's games this year on CBS Sports Network and CBS, so definitely a good crew to watch. You look at Omaha, the champions out of the Summit League. This is a team that has a good lead player in Markel Sutton, 19 points, 8 rebounds per game. They can shoot the 3. They got 2 guys in J.J. White and Tony Osborne that shoot 40%. So I think that's a key. Rick Pitino talked about that yesterday, that Omaha can shoot the 3. And I think St. John's, sometimes they leave those 3-point shooters open. If Omaha can get hot, have some belief in the first half, you might see this game get close. Right now, as I was looking, St. John's is favored in that game. Obviously, they're favored. They're favored by 18.5. And that number was 17.5, I think, when the matchup came up and then went up a point in like an hour. But the key to me in this one and why St. John's is going to win is their rebounding. Omaha doesn't have a good defense. They're about 250s in defensive efficiency. You would think St. John's can get on the offensive glass, even though Omaha has a decent defensive rebounding team. And the one thing you look at the Mavericks, they played 7 games this year against like decent teams like Iowa State and a couple of other major programs. They didn't win any of those games. And they weren't really close in a lot of those games where if St. John's played like a UC San Diego, even an Akron or somebody like that, you could make the argument. Now, it's a good story. I mean, there's the story out there from Omaha that their coach started off banging trash cans in the locker room after wins, and it kind of boosted their team to a Summit League championship. I don't doubt that maybe the nerves can get to St. John's a little bit early, but I don't really see how this team loses this game. It could be close. I don't doubt that it could be close into the early stage of the second half, but considering St. John's, they're such a good second half team, I think they'll find a way to get by this game. I don't think they have a dangerous 15, so they should be fine. And now you look at their path to potentially a Final Four. Now, if they win this game, they will play the winner of Kansas and Arkansas on Saturday. And you knew the committee was going to do something like this to set up a coaching matchup down the line. Either Bill Self or John Calipari. Bill Self is an intriguing one with Kansas. Kansas is an inconsistent team. They've got good guard play with Mayo and DeJuan Harris, but I think St. John's can kind of use their bigs to go at Hunter Dickinson. But remember, Zuby Ejiofor transferred from Kansas, and there's the story that's told a lot when you watch St. John's games that Bill Self told Rick Pitino when Ejiofor transferred there that he's a great defender and a great leader. He's got to work on his offensive game. And then Pitino started sending him video clips of Zuby on offense when he has these big games. So the fact that Zuby Ejiofor have a chance against his former team in round 2 to really make a statement would be, I think, really good for his story. And then there's Arkansas. And, of course, the rivalry between Rick Pitino and John Calipari. Pitino, of course, being at Louisville and Calipari was at Kentucky. Both are former Kentucky head coaches. Both have Vice docuseries this year following their teams. Arkansas is a team, look, they're going to maybe get Boogie Fland back. And Rick Pitino tried to recruit Boogie Fland to St. John's. Arkansas is a good team. But one of the things to look at, if Arkansas played St. John's on Saturday, is Arkansas, both these teams struggle with free throw shooting. And one of the reasons John Calipari's teams lose usually in big games, they don't make free throws. You saw it at Memphis, and I saw it watching Arkansas play Ole Miss in the SEC tournament. Arkansas wasn't making foul shots. They could have won that game if they just went to the charity stripe and hit some free throws. So that one would be there. Sweet 16 potentially with Texas Tech. Grant McCaskill's team is a strong unit. That's a team I think that can give St. John some fits. And then the Elite Eight would be a potential matchup with Florida. And a lot of people are picking Florida. I've watched like all these shows last night, and like everybody was picking Florida in the championship game, which usually if I'm making brackets, if someone's making a trendy pick, I usually try to avoid it. But the thing to keep an eye on with Florida, I know Florida's deep. I know the Gators, Todd Golden's a good coach. Here's the one thing that would help St. John's in that game. The Florida point guard, Walter Clayton, played for Rick Pitino at Iona. And Pitino tried to recruit him to come to St. John's. Clayton ultimately chose Florida once Pitino left the Gales. So there's at least some familiarity with Pitino and Florida star player that I think could help in that kind of matchup. Look, I think St. John's could be a Final Four team. I probably would pick that on my bracket because I just think, yes, their weakness is offense. Yes, they sometimes can't hit water if they fell out of a boat from three-point range. But the one thing you look for is the grit. Defense always shows up, and all they need is like a 10-0 run here or there in a game like you had against Creighton where you just get red hot in the second half for like 2-3 minutes. You can take a team out of a game. They just wear teams down. Look at what St. John's defense did to a guy like Stephen Ashworth, who's a really good point guard. He had an awful game shooting the ball. They just grind you down until you have nothing left. Their conditioning is really good. I think Aaron Scott's going to be a big X factor because of his defense and his three-point shooting. If he can hit a couple of threes, that goes a long way. All St. John's has to do is shoot like 40% from three. Like maybe make six out of maybe 8 out of 20, let's say, as a team. They average about 6 threes a game. So let's say they make 8. Then their defense, they're going to win a lot of games. That's why they are 30-4 this year. And I give Rick Pitino and his group so much credit. Just a fantastic job. Congratulations. They deserve every minute to celebrate, but they know the job's not done. And they're kind of have that focus of, we're ready for March. And Rick Pitino knows it best. He's won Final Fours, but he's lost first-round games before. I think his team is going to come ready to play and come ready at the right time. So it's something to keep an eye on as we get closer to that. Let's talk women's tournament. I want to get some of the action for the women's teams. And we had a couple of locals getting the last 4 in to the NCAA tournament. And we'll start with Princeton. The Lady Tigers get into the first 4. They will play Iowa State on Wednesday. Iowa State favored by 3.5. That game in South Bend. The winner will play Michigan in the early game on Friday. And you look at Iowa State, they've got a strong player in the paint, Audi Crooks. If you watch her play, she's really one of those players that are dominant inside. But Princeton's coming in red hot. They've won 16 of their last 19 games. They have a unanimous first-team All-Ivy League player in Ashley Che. I wouldn't be shocked if Princeton pulled this off, but we will see if they can get this win. They were not in the Ivy League championship, but they did find their way to get an at-large bid, which I kind of like that they have the women's tournament. Some of these smaller conferences get it. I wish that the big tournament kind of did that and kind of gave these small schools a little bit of a break. The other local that makes it, shout out to the Lady Lions of Columbia. They will play Washington on Thursday in Chapel Hill. Columbia is in the first 4 for the second straight season. Winner of that game will take on West Virginia on Saturday. Columbia is actually favored in this game by 1.5 points. And you look at Columbia, they were 13-1 in the Ivy League. They lost to Harvard in the championship game, a well-fought title game. And what could give Columbia the edge in this one is they've got a lot of senior leadership. They've got senior guard like Kitty Henderson. There's a team that's been on this stage that kind of knows how to handle it. Washington, meanwhile, their first year in the Big Ten, hasn't made the tournament since 2017. And that's a big deal, I think, in the grand scheme of things. So keep an eye on Columbia. I think they could win this game, get a shot at the 6th seed West Virginia. Maybe they can win a game in the tournament. Now they've kind of got this leadership, but props to both those schools getting the job done and getting into the NCAA tournament. So we get some locals in March Madness, which is great. It was not a great year for New Jersey basketball outside of Princeton's women. You had disappointment from Rutgers. The Princeton men don't get in. Seton Hall was a mess. So even though locally it wasn't the greatest team here, you do get some stories. Now, the big story from this morning, the mid-major side of things, Iona made the Metro Atlantic Championship and then ended up losing to Mount St. Mary's. Iona was the 4 seed. They upset the top seed, Quinnipiac, and thought all of a sudden you can maybe get St. John's Iona in round 1 and be pretty cool. But Iona makes the move today after losing that game to fire Tobin Anderson, who, of course, used to be the coach at Fairleigh Dickinson when they upset Purdue. Matt Norlander from CBS reported that Iona is going to hire New Orleans Pelicans assistant Dan Garrio. That'll be hopefully official later this week. So Iona quickly fires Anderson and has a guy in mind to take the job. But Rick Pitino's old job ends up having a replacement. That was Anderson was the guy who took over for Pitino. So send me your thoughts. What do you think? Do you have St. John's in your Final Four? How far do you have them going? And I want to hear what you think about what's the ceiling for this year's team. I think they can win a national championship. Do I think they will? No. But I think that a Final Four is definitely a realistic expectation for this group because it's hard for you to deny what they're doing right now. Take a quick timeout. We'll come back. We'll go back to the pros, talk some Knicks, and Mikal Bridges, some interesting conversation about mitts. What does it really mean? We'll talk West Coast trip from the Knicks. Not a great one, but some things to dive into. And we'll talk about the locals in the NHL with only 14 games left in the regular season. All 3 teams still in the mix for the playoffs. Where do they stand now as we head into the final weeks of March? You're listening to New York State Sports Tonight Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Wisconsin sports fans? I'm Dan, diehard Baholic, host of the Wisconsin Whistle. Check us out every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. We're talking Green Bay Packers, Milwaukee Brewers, Milwaukee Bucks, Marquette basketball, Wisconsin football and basketball, and all Wisconsin sports. Don't miss us each week, Wednesdays, 6 p.m. on IE Sports Radio. your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to New York's Day of Sports, 90 Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K back with you this afternoon. We talked about St. John's. So we go from college to the pros, and let's talk Knicks. And really the big story from this week was comments made by Mikal Bridges. He was talking to the media about minutes. And, of course, we know Tom Thibodeau loves to play his starters a whole lot of minutes. That's been one of the narratives that I think gets people annoyed, especially Knicks fans constantly hearing about that. So Mikal Bridges said this week, sometimes it's not fun on the body. You'll want that as a coach, but also talk to him a little bit knowing we've got good enough team where our bench guys can come in and we don't need to play 47, 48 minutes. We've got a lot of good guys in this team that can take away minutes, which helps the defense, helps the offense, helps tired bodies being out there and giving up all these points. It helps just keeping fresh bodies out there. When I heard this quote, I guess Bridges kind of felt inspired to say this by the Jalen Brunson injury. Shams Charania reported over the weekend that it probably sounds like the Knicks will hopefully know more about Brunson in early April. Now, again, we're only a few weeks away from that, so it's not surprising that Brunson's not close to ready yet. But we know the Knicks have some decent players on the bench. We know that they need to find out what this bench can do. You look Saturday against Golden State, and you only get 4 points off your bench. You bring in P.J. Tucker. You have Tyler Kolek, who the Knicks are still looking to see. Campaign only gets 10 minutes. The Knicks have to find a way to get some spark from their bench if they want to make a deep playoff run. That's a different point entirely. What bothered me when I heard Mikal Bridges say this was I think it was the wrong guy to give the message. Bridges has played almost every game of his career. He's a guy that's an Iron Man. He's always on the court. Him and Josh Hart play a ton of minutes. If Josh Hart or Karl Anthony Towns had said this, I'm fine with it. I don't think Mikal Bridges has the track record yet as a Knick to say this publicly. He wants to go privately to Coach Tibbs and it gets leaked out that he had a private meeting. That's fine. You have a kid. Right now, Mikal Bridges has been a disappointment with the Knicks. Considering 5 first-round picks you give up, you want a guy that's going to be out there consistently putting up points. Now, he's been better. Last 4 games, 22 against the Clippers, 15 against Sacramento in a blowout, 33 against Portland, and 19 against Golden State. Not bad. Considering he didn't make a 3 against the Clippers, he's actually done a lot better, at least, in taking some more 3-point shots. And when you consider the Portland game, he hit the game-winning 3 at the buzzer in overtime to give the Knicks that win. So he's starting to step up a little bit, which is good. And look, this is what Tom Thibodeau is. He's going to be a guy that relies a lot on his starters. And for a Knicks team with about 16 games to go, you look at the standings, they're not going to be in the mix for the 1 seed. They're not going to be in the mix for the 2 seed. So you wonder if the 3 or the 4, and considering they're 4.5 ahead of the 3 for the 3 spot, maybe in the last 2 weeks of the year, if the Knicks have a lot wrapped up, he does play guys a little bit less to keep them fresh and to do those things. That could be a different conversation. I don't think that's the conversation right now when you still have games to play for. You still want to have some consistency. You don't want to go into one of those long losing streaks. So that can be an issue. And that's something that will creep up. Knicks go 2-3 on the West Coast trip. Last week, we talked about the losses to the Lakers and the Clippers. This week, they get a nice blowout win in Sacramento. They, of course, had the overtime win against the Blazers. That was a good game. And then even Saturday, not a bad performance against Golden State. They lose by 3, 97-94. Steph Curry has 28 points. I think the bigger story in this game is I didn't really see. I thought we should see a Knick maybe commit a hard foul on Draymond Green, especially after those comments against he made about Karl Anthony Towns. We didn't see that. I love the way OG played 23 points, but Josh Hart doesn't score a single point, misses all 7 shots. They need more from Josh Hart. Not 20 points, but if you get 8 points from Josh Hart, you win this game. So you get swept by Golden State. Golden State's one of the hottest teams in the NBA, but still, that's a game you want a measuring stick. And you look at the measuring stick the Knicks have had. You lose to the Clippers, who are a good team. You lose to Golden State, who's a good team. You got to beat good teams. You could beat up on Portland and beat up on Sacramento, who doesn't have Fox, and now he's in San Antonio. But you've got to beat some of these good teams. So not a failure, but a disappointment they didn't get the win in Golden State. Knicks this week have 4 games. They play tonight against the Heat, 7:30 on ESPN. Knicks are favored by 7.5. They will be at the Spurs on Wednesday. Of course, no Fox and no Wemby, so that matchup kind of changes things, at least from an entertainment perspective. Knicks are at Charlotte, second night of a back-to-back on Thursday, and then they're home to the Wizards on Saturday. So basically here you've got the next 5 games are against teams under 500 before they play the Clippers a week from Wednesday. So chance for the Knicks to kind of get some wins, feel confident about themselves, and go from there. Want to give the Brooklyn Nets some love. A nice win over the Lakers last week. Now, I know LeBron's been out, but Luka played. And to get that win at the Barclays Center, I know Nets fans out there but we can't win. We shouldn't be winning because we want to get the best lottery odds possible. But still, you got to enjoy the Nets at least. You look at this week, and they put some really competitive games together. They beat the Lakers. Second night of a back-to-back. They only lose by 5 against a Cavs team that recently won 16 in a row. Lose against the Bulls, 116-110 on Thursday. They scored 34-18 in the fourth quarter. Kobe Whitehead, 31 for Chicago. And then against the Celtics, the reigning champs. Nets had a rally late. They cut the deficit to 2. They lost 115-113. But again, you're seeing competitive efforts. And if you want the Nets to lose, you still want them to be competitive in these games. They beat the Hawks last night by 8, 122-114. So you look at the Nets playing 5 games this week, and their biggest margin of victory or defeat was about 6 to 8 points. You sign up for that, I think. Nets this week have the Celtics again. That's Tuesday night in Boston. And then a home and home with Indiana Thursday at the Pacers. And actually, no, it's not a home and home. They play both games at Indiana this week. That's weird. You usually see home and homes. But 2 games with the Pacers on the road, and then they will be back home a week from tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. Unfortunately, no Kyrie and no Anthony Davis for those games, so it loses a little bit of appeal when Dallas comes to the New York area. Moving on to the NHL. As we said, last 15 games in the regular season, the Rangers had a huge stretch of games this week. They go on the road to Columbus. After getting embarrassed by the Blue Jackets a week ago at the Garden, they get 21 saves from Igor Shesterkin, goal from Alexis Lafreniere, a goal from Artemi Panarin, 2 goals from Vincent Trocheck, and they win 4-0. And that's huge because it put the Rangers in that final playoff position. You get another win over Columbus, which you go look at head-to-heads and things like that, that's a major deal. They, 2 nights before, beat Minnesota in overtime on the road. They lose 2-1 to Winnipeg earlier this week. Very competitive effort against one of the better teams in the NHL, but you don't get the win. And then last night, they took on Connor McDavid and the Oilers. Now, Pierre Laviolette made a decision to start Igor second night of a back-to-back. Igor doesn't really do that a lot. They showed the stat last night that he'd done it 4 times. He won all 4 games. But I thought Edmonton did a really good job. Arvidsson had a goal in the third period. I think Igor won back. But give Stuart Skinner a lot of credit for Edmonton and net. He was really good. 21 saves. Rangers had some good chances in the third period, got in front of the net, and just couldn't get that one big goal that changes the game. So Edmonton gets the win. If you told me before the game the Rangers are going to hold Connor McDavid to 1 shot, I'd be okay with it. But the 1 shot McDavid had found the back of the net. That ultimately put the game out of reach for the Rangers. So as of today, where they stand in the playoff race in the wild card, they lead Montreal by a point. The only problem is Montreal and Columbus is 2 points back. Detroit's 2 points back. Montreal and Columbus still have 2 more games to play to match the Rangers. Detroit has 1. In terms of tonight's action, the NHL, we'll get to that in a minute. I'll pull that up and see if they can make up that deficit. Rangers this week have 3 games, all of them at home. They play Calgary tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. They play Toronto on Thursday, and then they will host Vancouver Saturday. They'll get a nice tribute to Sam Rosen, of course, the great announcer, his final year with the team. Tonight, in terms of anything that could affect the Rangers, Blue Jackets are home to the Devils. So Rangers are going to need some help from New Jersey. That's the only team that's chasing them right now that's really of note. Montreal's next game is going to be Tuesday against Ottawa. So the Canadiens will have time to make up those games. But the Canadiens also play a team like the Avalanche on Saturday. So we'll see what happens with the playoff picture. Rangers, in terms of competitiveness on their schedule, it's not that hard of a schedule going forward. They have the 12th toughest schedule left, but I think a lot of it's backloaded at the end of the year when you play Florida and Tampa and the Devils. That's where it's going to be put. So the Rangers, when they're at home, you've got to win these games. And we'll see if they get more efforts like they got against Columbus or compared to what they do against Edmonton. The fun story this week, though, comes from New Jersey. Now, I know they're still feeling the loss of Jack Hughes. Jesper Bratt's going to try to break the assist record set by Scott Stevens from a defense. So that's a good thing for him. The reason you see here, if you're watching on YouTube, the Devils get inspiration from a cookie. Now, what does that mean? The Devils when you go to the Gates Prudential Center, they have a dessert race on the Jumbotron. And for the first time ever earlier this week, the Mrs. Fields cookie won the race. The next night, same race, the cookie wins again. You got people dressed up as cookies for this kind of thing. And a lot of people thought it would push the Devils really on that kind of magical run. You look for things like this. They had beaten Columbus last Tuesday 5-3. They beat Edmonton 3-2 on Thursday, and then they go to Pittsburgh and you get embarrassed by the Penguins 7-3. Considering Sidney Crosby did not score a goal and you give 7 to the Penguins, that's not good. They got down 4-1. They cut the lead to 4-3 in the third, thanks to power play goals from Timo Meier and Nico Hischier, but Pittsburgh scores 3 goals in the final 6 minutes to break that game open. So not a good performance in New Jersey. Right now, they lead the Rangers by 6 points in terms of holding on to the third spot in the Metro. I think they'll still get that. They're lucky Ottawa's not in the Metro because Ottawa would pass them. Devils this week have 3 games. They're at the Blue Jackets tonight, so they'll look to help the Rangers and also continue to pad their points lead. They are home to Calgary on Thursday, and then they're home to Ottawa on Saturday. That should be a really fun game at Prudential Center. Talking about the Islanders. Islanders, of course, their offense is going to take a major hit, especially when you trade away a guy like Brock Nelson. But I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but they're pushing. Right now, if you told any Islander fan, and I know Ralph usually here, that's usually the big Islander guy in the room, that they would be only a few points out of the playoff spot, they would sign up for that. And they did lose to LA 4-1. That's a tough game on the road, but they come back, lose in overtime to Edmonton. Probably should have got 2 points, but Draisaitl scored. He scored both goals, including the one in overtime. And they come back last night. You're down 2 goals to the reigning Stanley Cup champions, and you score 4 goals, including goals with 17 seconds from each other. Siplakov tied the game at 2, and then 17 seconds later, Noah Dobson scored his 7th. Matt Gatcomb had a goal. Holmstrom tacks on the empty net. And the Islanders win 4-2. 22 saves from Igor Shesterkin. Strong performance. And you look at the Islanders right now, they're 4 points behind the Rangers, and they have 2 games at hand. So the Islanders aren't that far off. And they're going to have to find a way to score. Outside of that 4-goal stretch in the third period, they had scored 3 goals over the course of 11 periods before that. So they're going to have to find a way to put more pucks in the net. And their schedule is somewhat tough. They get Pittsburgh tomorrow night on the road, but then Calgary at home Saturday before they play Columbus on Monday. So Islanders will have some tough games. It'll be interesting to see how they respond. Remember, they end the month with Tampa and Carolina. So can they withstand things? We shall see. But the locals all with a chance. I think it's all you ask for. 14 games left in the NHL season. Some teams 15, some teams 16, that you have a chance in these kind of things. We'll take another time out. We'll come back. We'll talk NFL free agency. Giants making some moves, Jets making some moves. We still don't know who the heck's playing quarterback for the New York Giants, but we have some news that maybe might tip the scales a little bit. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on The Defining Moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K back with you. Was excited to hear The Defining Moment back on this weekend. Larry B doing a good job covering, well, just about everything in sports, as we all try to do on these shows. In New York, I think we get so many different topics to talk about. It's so much fun to jam-pack everything into, in this case, we've gone about a little over an hour with these shows. But thank you for sticking with this show. We're going to talk some football. And, of course, when you think about it, St. John's kind of took a lot of the shine away from NFL free agency. We were on, of course, last week live during the Justin Fields signing. We'll talk Giants first. And, of course, we talked about Paulson Adebo, bringing him in 3 years, $54 million. The other big re-signing, well, signing, but in this case, re-signing, Darius Slayton. A lot of people thought Slayton was going to go to a team with a more defined quarterback situation. He elects to stay 3 years, $36 million. And it's good for the Giants that he stays. Slayton's a reliable number 2 wide receiver. He's a leader on the team. He's become a guy that's earned every dollar that he's making. You could argue he took a little bit less to stay with the Giants, but that's a guy that's well received in that locker room. So good for him that he gets to stay. Supposedly, he told the media that Joe Shane and the front office kind of told him what the quarterback plan is. I don't think we know what the quarterback plan is right now, but he was supposedly on board for it. So we'll see what happens with that. The weird signing by the Giants. So last year, Joe Schoen decided not to pay Xavier McKinney and let him go to the Green Bay Packers. This year, he takes a safety, Javon Holland, 3 years, $45.3 million. Now, Holland, coming from Miami, guy who has battled some injuries, but has a lot of talent. But it begs the question, why didn't Joe Schoen do this for a player that is homegrown compared to a guy that you're getting from another team? And it goes to show you, I think, how desperate the Giants are. And sometimes you're desperate, you tend to go outside the norm of what you normally do. Giants knew they had to make some kind of a splash in free agency. Holland is that kind of player. He's, I think, a guy that could help Tyler Nubin and be a veteran experience in that secondary room. It'll help there. Other signings they made this week, Chauncey Golston from the Cowboys, some depth off the edge. They bring in a swing tackle and James Hudson III from the Browns. Chris Board, I think, is going to be an interesting one. 2 years, $6 million. Chris Board is one of the better special teams guys in the league. I think he's going to help. They do, however, need to. They brought back their punter, Jamie Gillian. I like they brought back Smith Marset as well. He did a really good job on special teams. And Chris Manhertz comes back as a backup tight end. So that begs the question, what do the Giants do at quarterback? Nobody knows what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. And Aaron Rodgers, to me, sounds way too much like Brett Favre, which is weird because right now all reports are, or some reports, that Aaron Rodgers is waiting on the Vikings. And I don't understand why the Vikings would make that move when they have J.J. McCarthy. And they believe in J.J. McCarthy that much to let Sam Darnold go. Why would you even look to bring in Aaron Rodgers? To me, that doesn't make sense. And you talk about a guy in Rodgers who had a rivalry with Favre. Why would he want to follow the same path as Brett Favre? Packers, Jets, Vikings. I don't understand that. To me, Rodgers has become kind of like Brett Favre in that he loves this thing drawn out. There should have been a decision by now. I don't know. It's got to be about dollars. It has to be. But that's you kind of, when you rely on waiting for a guy like Rodgers to make a decision, it holds you back on what you can do. Now, the Giants have met with a couple of quarterbacks. They met with Russell Wilson on Friday. Russell Wilson, of course, was at the Giants facility last year in the offseason, so I don't know what he could have learned in this meeting necessarily. I actually like Russell Wilson as the best option because he can be a mentor, whichever young quarterback they bring in. He's a guy that can have some success, albeit limited success, but a player that if he kind of knows what he is. And the other two guys they've looked at are kind of mentors. Joe Flacco. Of course, Flacco spent some time with the Jets, was a reason the Giants beat the Colts, as Joe Flacco was terrible. Again, when in that week 17 matchup earlier in December. But Flacco, I think, could be a good help and add some veteran presence in the quarterback room. And the other one they're going to meet with tomorrow, Jordan Rana unreported from ESPN, is Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, of course, is the guy that you love watching when he's not on your team because he's entertaining, but he makes a lot of mistakes. A lot of interceptions. Not good decision-making with the ball. Jameis, of course, was with the Browns last year. Can he make a difference for a rookie? Because if you're bringing in Flacco or Jameis, you're drafting a quarterback. You could make the argument if you bring in Rodgers that you're not drafting a quarterback at number 3 or trying to trade up with Tennessee. I still think that's in play because we were doing a mock draft on iSports Radio, our group chat over the weekend. If I had the pick, I would probably would still go quarterback, and I would still go. I'm a more believer on Shedeur Sanders than most. Reason being, I think he was a guy that did not benefit from a good offensive line at Colorado, but you saw flashes in the leadership of what he has, and I think he's getting held too much by the whole Deion Sanders stuff. That's not fair to him as a player. I think while he has the lack of mobility, he's very accurate with the football. And I'm not saying he'd be a star, but if I had him at 3 and Cam Ward's gone, I'd say the Titans take Cam Ward. I don't really know if I would say, hey, pass on a quarterback or even use resources to trade up for Jackson Dart. I'd rather take Shedeur than Dart, in my opinion. But again, I could be wrong. But if I'm the Giants, again, I probably look to get Russell Wilson more so than Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to wait for him. Like, it comes down to the point, if Aaron Rodgers makes you wait this much longer, move on. Because at that point, you're looking to maybe give 30, 35 million. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I know he ended the season well last year, but I don't think he can have that same kind of impact, even though Neighbors is here and would benefit from it. I don't see the upside with that. I just don't. I think there's more negatives than positives with Aaron Rodgers back in New York with the Giants. Now you go to the Jets. Jets, I think a couple of things are interesting here. They did help their secondary. They had Brandon Stevens from the Ravens, kind of replaces DJ Reed. They get a very good safety in Andre Cisco for a one-year deal. They get a cool name, a tight end, Stone Smart. I still think they could look for a tight end and other options, if not in the draft. But the interesting signing that stood out to me was Josh Myers at center. They give Josh Myers a one-year, $3.5 million deal. Josh Myers has not had a great NFL career, but the one thing that stood out about that signing is he was Justin Fields' center at Ohio State. So they get him his college center and his college wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. There's at least some familiarity there. And I think the Jets ultimately, like we said last week, made the right move with Fields. I think he's a guy 26 years old that still has something there. Can they find that upside where he can somewhat live up to the high draft pick? We'll see. I think that will help. The other thing that was interesting last night, T. Higgins re-signs with the Bengals, 4-year deal, first 2 years guaranteed over $100 million. You can't tell me Garrett Wilson's not looking at that contract and says, I can get that money. Because the Jets, their next big thing after the draft for Darren Mujier in that front office is you've got to find a way to extend Sauce Gardner. And you've got to find a way to extend Garrett Wilson. Now, it sounds like they're going to keep Alan Lazard because they can't use any more post-June 1st cuts. We'll see if they find a suitor or they help Lazard because that wide receiver room is not good right now. They're going to have to add a wide receiver. Maybe they go out. Still some veterans available. Guys like Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper. There's still guys that can make an impact. We'll see ultimately what route they go, but the Jets definitely need to improve the skill positions. And the other question is going to be offensive line. You're going to put Vera Tucker on the right side to try to help out because the Jets kind of lost some offensive line depth with Morgan Moses going to New England. So now I think the opposite side of the ball is going to be key. They've helped out the defensive side of the ball a good amount. Re-signing Sherwood, adding those secondary pieces we talked about. But it's going to be about, to me, what happens on the offensive side of the ball. But there's still plenty of time between now and the draft to see what shakes out. Moving over to baseball, and sometimes we forget that there's a month to go. Well, not a month, about a week and a half to go until opening day. Tomorrow is the technically opening day because out in Tokyo, the Cubs are going to play the Dodgers in a 2-game series. So that should be a lot of fun. Yankees and Mets will start a week from Thursday, so they got 10 days. On the Yankees side of things, Clark Schmidt threw a bullpen today. All signs encouraging. He was dealing with soreness after his starts this spring. He's still on track to start and make his season debut in first week of April, which they absolutely need. I think if you're the Yankees right now, you know Garrett Cole needs Tommy John surgery. He had the Tommy John surgery. It sounds like, though, it could be more of a 12-month recovery than a 16, 18-month recovery. If that's the case, you get Cole back early next year. Brian Cashman said last week the Yankees are going to use a lot of resources from within. They don't have that many. I think that's where I'm not saying the Yankees have to go out and trade for Sandy Alcantara right now or Dylan Cease or Michael King. If they want to make that move at the deadline, that's fine. But if you have the insurance money from Garrett Cole, you can't tell me you can't spend that on a guy like Kyle Gibson. You can't spend that like an Anthony DeSclafani. Not saying to give him all $14 million, but you're telling me you can't make a move to bring in a guy to kind of help you in the first few weeks of the year. Those guys won't be ready to pitch opening day, but that might be of use for a team like that. Maybe get a guy on a minor league deal that you can bring in because they don't have much depth. mean, right now your fifth starter competition is between Carlos Carrasco and Will Warren. I would give the nod to Warren, but the problem is he's got options. Carrasco's opt-out. Jack Curry talked about it on Twitter today. It's in about a week. They have a week to make a decision on Carrasco. I think they'll keep him because they need him in that rotation. They'll try to pitch him as much as he can. But Warren is the guy with more upside. Warren's the pitcher having a good spring that I think fans want to see a lot more of. Other news, opening day starter was announced, and it's Carlos Rodon. I'd rather it be Max Fried, but Max Fried's pitching schedule kind of prevented him from that. He's going to pitch the second game against Milwaukee. We'll see how Rodon gets received. He's not a guy who gets received well from fans because he's been okay as a Yankee, but he hasn't been everything as advertised. He will start against Freddie Peralta for the Brewers. That should be a fun matchup. But not else much going on for the Yankees. I think what's been good for the Yankees to see is Austin Wells hitting leadoff. Will that continue into the year? He's had a good spring. Goldschmidt's had a good spring. Bellinger's had a good spring. So it's good to see the guys they brought in having success. You wouldn't panic if they struggled, but it's always good to see players performing at a high level. Yankees this afternoon are in Dunedin to take on the Blue Jays and Kevin Gausman. They will be against the Red Sox tomorrow. Max Fried and Walker Buehler will start in that game on yes. Meanwhile, the Mets, they made a decision on opening day, and it's kind of weird, but it's Clay Holmes. It is Clay Holmes, who's had a really good spring. I get why the Mets don't want to use Kodai Senga in that spot just yet, but you can't tell me David Peterson didn't really deserve it. David Peterson, I think, would have been a better choice. I don't want to throw Clay Holmes into the fire right away, but they're doing that in Houston against the Astros, so not a bad decision, but I would have gone alternatives on that front. Mets, of course, are trying to figure out one of their final bench spots. Luis Angel Acuna and Brett Beatty in the mix for that. That'll be a competition to monitor. Brandon Nimmo is back in the outfield today, which is a good sign, especially Nimmo having those gel procedure on his knee. Can he hold up going to opening day? We shall see. Mets have a split squad today. Part of their split squad is in Jupiter against the Miami Marlins. The starter in that one for the Mets is Paul Blackburn, Juan Soto, and Pete. So most Juan Soto's out in Jupiter, Pete Alonso, and Mark Vientos. So you actually have a decent squad making the road trip. The other game the Mets have, they are against Tampa. Griffin Canning is starting, one of the players in the mix for that, one of those final rotation spots with Tyler McGill, who's had a good spring. Lindor's playing, Nimmo's playing, Jesse Winker's playing. Beatty's at second in this one. Jose Siri's out in center. And the interesting story in that one is Mike Vasil starting for Tampa. Mike Vasil was selected in the Rule 5 draft from the Mets organization and eventually got shipped to Tampa. I think the Phillies took him. There also is that cool documentary Mets put out on social media about the pursuit of Juan Soto. You want to check that out. In terms of other baseball documentaries, the trailer came out today for the Apple documentary about the World Series between the Dodgers and Yankees. That'll first episode, I believe, is March 28th. If you're looking for a kind of baseball show to check out. Next week on the show, I'll give you some Yankee predictions, give you some Met predictions. We'll talk surprises, top regular season storylines. We did spring storylines, but now I want to focus on the regular season because a lot has changed for both these teams between the spring and as we get set to when these games actually count in 10 days. The Yankees home in Milwaukee. The Mets are in Houston. So we'll take one more time out. We'll come back. We'll go around the rest of sports. We'll give a soccer update, an NWSL update as that season's underway. We'll talk a big trade for the Liberty and some love for some of the other colleges going on. We got to talk about one of the schools that is moving on in hockey. You're listening to New York's Day of Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. Our final timeout, and then we'll wrap up episode 83 after this.
Are you a fan of Minnesota sports? Do you love the Vikings and hate the Packers? Are you a fan of the Timberwolves, Twins, Wild, Lynx? St. Paul Saints. Here on the Bold North Breakdown, we'll talk about all of those professional teams as well as all the college teams in the area. That's your basketball teams, football, hockey, volleyball, men's and women's sports alike. We talk about them all. You're on the Bold North Breakdown. Join me, your host, Glenn Ritter, every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central to discuss all that is happening in the Minnesota sports scene. Here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Wrapping up episode 83 of New York State of Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. Ricky K here with you. Thanks for all who have tuned in over the last hour plus. And can send any comments, questions you have here on YouTube or Twitch. We'd be happy to hear from you. Let's talk some soccer. Red Bulls in a conference final rematch against Orlando FC this weekend. And they end up getting a tie or a draw, 2-2. Second straight draw for the Red Bulls, and they've had a couple of those in the early portion of the season. Choupo-Moting scores in the 29th minute a penalty shot, gets his first goal as a member of the Red Bulls. They get a goal in the 47th minute from Dennis Gengar. Gengar, of course, in his second season, so good to see the young player getting a huge goal for this group. Again, when you lose Lewis Morgan, that was a big injury last week. Lewis Morgan's going to be out the next 6 weeks. That's a big loss to this group because Morgan's one of the veterans that just a older roster, like one of those veterans that you relied on to get some consistency. So you're going to need some of those younger players like Gengar to really step up and deliver. Carlos Coronel had some big saves in the second half. No team scored after the 47th minute, so both these teams showed some good defense down the stretch. Red Bulls will play Toronto this weekend, 7:30 at Sports Illustrated Stadium here in Harrison, New Jersey. These teams played 3 times last year. Red Bulls won 2 of them. The other one was a 0-0 draw that went to penalties in the Leagues Cup. So in the 2 regular season matches, Red Bulls outscored Toronto 7-1. Toronto has yet to pick up a win this season. They have lost each of the last 3 games. They lost to Orlando on March 1st. They lost to Cincy on March 8th, and then lost to the Fire on Saturday. So chance for the Red Bulls to get some points at home. Meanwhile, NYCFC was at home this weekend as well. They were at Yankee Stadium taking on the New England Revolution, and they pick up a victory. Final score in that one being 2-1. And I think you're starting to see a little bit more consistency from this team. Julian Fernandez, who, of course, the player they're going to need to get some offense, he scored in the 38th minute after Thiago Martins had an own goal to put New England up 1-0. Adrian Martinez scored in the 68th minute, and that was enough. Matt Freese did a really good job in net. New England only had one shot on goal in this game, so good job by the defense for NYCFC. So they picked up a pair of good results at home. That's a good sign for them. They are 2-1-1 on the season. And their next opponent will be in Columbus. They'll take on the Crew, 7:30 Eastern on Saturday. Columbus won 4-2 last year. Of course, these two teams went to penalties in the Leagues Cup. Columbus won that one, and 3-2 on June 14th last year. So the Crew have had NYCFC's number as of late. But we'll see if they can get a point. We've looked at the two road games that this team has played. They tied Miami in a game they should have won, and they lost in the late minutes to LAFC. So they have played well against tough competition. We're going to see what they do. Again, now that the schedule is a little tougher. Columbus this week, and then Atlanta next week before they head home to play Minnesota and play a couple more games. So we'll see what happens there. We had the NWSL start this week. Gotham FC, of course, with Rose Lavelle and company. They took on Seattle on the road, and they get a good result. A 1-1 draw. Gabby Portillo with the goal in the 47th minute. They do surrender a goal by Emery Adamas in the 71st minute. But you get a point on the road. They had 4 shots on goal, 3 yellow cards, but not a bad performance, especially to begin the season. And that's the team that's going to be expected to do some things. They've got Tierna Davidson. They've got Rose Lavelle. This is a group that can. Esther Gonzalez is a player, I think, to watch this year. Ella Stevens. They've got some good players on this team. And we'll see if they could get a step further. They got to the semis last year. Can they get to that championship game and win it? We'll see. Their home opener is this Sunday, 5 o'clock on ESPN2. They will take on Orlando. The Pride, last year, these teams played twice. The Pride won 2-0 in one of the meetings in September, and then in October, Gotham FC won 3-1. Orlando was coming off of a dominant 6-0 win over Chicago. So their offense is humming right now, and that's a really good sign. This is a team that also tied and lost the penalties in the NWSL Challenge Cup the week before. So we'll see what Orlando does going in. And then the other big news, because I was like, wait, I've got my rundown. I'm ready on the podcast. And then late Sunday night, the New York Liberty make a trade. And they go out and they acquire Natasha Cloud from the Connecticut Sun. Now, Natasha Cloud's a veteran, 33 years old. But what the Liberty needed to make some kind of move this offseason, they didn't need to make a big move. They didn't have to go out and make like the Alyssa Thomas move that the Mercury did, but they needed a little bit of something. And they go out and they get Cloud. Now, all they give up is the 7th pick in this year's draft. Well, let's be honest. You look at pick, even though they had the 7th pick as the defending champs, they're not going to get a player that's going to impact this year because, of course, you want to maximize that you have Brianna Stewart and you have Sabrina Nescu and you have John Quill Jones and you have Benaja Laney Hamilton. You need vets. So to add Cloud, you get the first round pick this year, first round next year. Well, again, if you're in the WNBA playoffs and you're making a run, that pick isn't going to matter as much. The GM, Jonathan Kolb, said Tasha is someone who identified years ago as a prime fit for our team and embodies everything we look for in a player. She has always left a lasting impression on the Barclays Center crowd. We look forward to seeing the best fans of WNBA embrace her on a nightly basis. Tasha will undoubtedly strengthen our roster on both sides of the ball as we pursue another title in 25. She was with the Phoenix Mercury, acquired last year was acquired via trade from the Sun in February. I guess this was the Alyssa Thomas trade. But she's well known for her defense. She was all defensive first team in 2022. Last year, she was all defensive second team. So while she does average about 9 points, 5 assists, 3 boards, so she does a little bit of everything. But I think her defense is what she's going to be more valuable for with this team. She's got a good toughness with her. We've seen when she's with the Mystics. And she's a player that could really make an impact. And I kind of like what this team is like with its core in place. And I'm really excited for the summer and see this team getting the chance to repeat. The next big event in the WNBA calendar is the draft. That's April 14th after the women's tournament is over. But of course, when the Liberty not having a first round pick, they're not going to get that impact college player. But if we kind of looked around and saw the brackets, we'll saw the mock drafts, I don't think they would be getting, they're not getting like Paige Beckers or something like that. So it doesn't really matter to that extent. Shout out to the Cornell women. They make the Frozen Four. Women's hockey, they will take on Ohio State in there on Friday. And then real quick, want to talk about some of the smaller division tournaments. Division 2, we saw St. Thomas Aquinas upset the 1 seed Damon in Amherst 79-74. And they will take on Assumption. That game will take place tomorrow at 7 o'clock. The 5 versus the 6 in the East region. Assumption beat Dominican New York 81-75. Dominican had upset Adelphi as the 2 seed 85-68. Meanwhile, we'll go to, I think, right now. All right, so we're going to go to Division 3 next on the men's side. And for Division 3, of course, the big story is NYU. They've been dominating everybody on the men's side. They are in the Final Four after a 75-65 win over Redlands. Their next opponent is going to be on, I believe, let's do the math here, Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern. They'll play Washington St. Louis, who is 23-6 on the year. And NYU went 28-1. So that's Division 2 and Division 3 on the men's side. Let's talk about the women's side. Get to the bracket there. Division 2, we saw Damon lose to Holy Family during this tournament. And I don't think we have anything on the Division 2 side, at least to talk about. We do have, in Division 3, another NYU is great both on the men's and women's side. We talk about the NYU women. Their latest win was a 76-51 win over Gettysburg. They will play Wisconsin Stout. That's at 5 o'clock on Thursday in the Final Four. You can watch that on ESPN Plus. The women 25-0 this year, so they will try to complete an undefeated season. You can watch that again, ESPN Plus, Thursday at 5 o'clock. So you think about your Thursday lineup. If you're a New York college sports fan, you've got NYU women at 5, Columbia women going for first 4 win over Washington, and St. John's against Omaha. So you've got some good good college sports coming up over the next week or so. So be sure to tune in, of course, to all the March Madness. I haven't picked my Final Four yet. I think St. John's will be in it, but I have to go through the brackets. A lot of tough choices this year on that. But that is in the books. Congrats to the St. John's Red Storm, first Big East Conference championship since 2000. They're riding that wave right now, that Red Storm wave. They're playing great basketball, 9 straight wins, 30-4. I think Omaha will give them a little bit of a push in the first half, but I think St. John's will find a way to move on, and then they'll play the winner of Arkansas and Kansas on Saturday. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll try to see if we can get some St. John's post-games for you during the NCAA tournament, but it should be a lot of fun. Next week, we'll talk more Yankees and Mets. We'll have the regular season in full effect. We'll be 3 days away from that, so we'll give you predictions for both those teams and what to expect. What do the Giants do at quarterback? We're going to find out. Whether it's Jameis Winston, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco. So many names in the mix. Him and Knicks, now that they're back on the East Coast, get some wins against some under 500 teams. Rangers trying to build off some success they had this week. They still struggle to win more than 2 in a row. But every game is critical for this Rangers team, and we will see what happens as we get closer to the postseason, about 15 games to go. Islanders try to make one more push, and the Devils trying to hold on to that number 3 spot in the Metro Division. It's been a great show. We have a couple more in March. We'll get closer to April. Thanks to all those who tuned in today. We have a lot of shows coming for you later today. This is KC Sports, Carolina Sports Update. Can we talk about those Tar Heels? I don't know how they got in, but they got in. We'll talk Chi-Town Weekly, Set Point, and we have the Extra Mile tonight. So a lot of good shows here Monday on the network. From all of us here at IE Sports Radio, for Larry, I'm Ricky K, saying enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy March Madness. We'll be back next time to talk some more St. John's hoops and much more in New York. So long, everybody.